This happened a couple years ago. I remember this day very vividly because it caught me off guard. I was in the passenger seat. My mom was in the driver's seat. We were going over a train track when something told me to look up. As I looked up, I saw 3 hooded entities. They looked like the Grim Reaper, with wisps of smoke falling off of the ends of their cloaks. I couldn't see their faces, just their hoods. I didn't want to look away for fear of them being gone. As we went over the train tracks, there were a few trees that covered the area. They ended up disappearing behind some. I asked my mom if she saw them, but she said no, and that she wasn't paying attention to the sky. She was too busy on Bluetooth with my stepdad and paying attention to the radio. They didn't have legs, or at least it seemed like the cloak covered them. They just seemed to float. They never looked my way, but I remember being so confused and scared. I will admit, I had some dreams of the hooded beings. I even saw one in my room years after the first experience. I think after seeing those 3 entities is when I became fascinated with the unknown. I've looked for other experiences similar to mine here, but to no avail. About 4 years later, my aunt saw a creature similar to the ones I saw. It actually chased her to her car. She said its face was completely white. Its mouth was wide open as if it were screaming, and the eyes were black. She said it looked almost like the mask from the movie Scream. We all asked her if she was sure it wasn't some prankster, and she said no. It disappeared as she got into her car, and she seemed really shaken up about it. She wouldn't get out of her car after she got here, and she cried as she told the story. Has anyone else ever had an experience like this? This happened about a year ago. I was in the backyard with my girlfriend, her mom, and her sister. It was broad daylight. I looked up in the sky, and what I saw is going to be really hard to describe, because I haven't seen anything like it before. I don't exactly have the vocabulary. It would look to be one solid object, very fluidly, morphed into 6 or 7 smaller objects, all connected to a central area. All of the smaller objects began to move around it, kind of like a centrifuge. But then, they all began their own individual movement. It looked to be about the size of a drone, and my first thought was that the objects in the outer area were high-tech propellers or something. But the way it moved didn't match with anything I'd ever seen before. All outer objects moved erratically, of their own accord, yet at the same time, they moved as one throughout the sky. Everyone I was with was staring at it as well, which was super reassuring in the ensuing discussion. We all saw the same thing. I whipped my phone out to film. I took a fairly shitty video, but if you move it frame by frame, you can see what I'm talking about with the movement. My bedroom was pitch black while I was getting the baby to sleep, and we have blackout curtains in there too. So, no outside lights, no electronics. For the record, to the best of my knowledge, I have no health problems, and I was sober. For approximately 1 to 2 seconds, a very bright, yet warm, white light danced across the ceiling. It was in the shape of a flame, and slithered across very quickly. It began just above the wall I was facing, and moved toward me, but remained on the ceiling, and then darted upward as if going to the attic, and disappeared, not unlike a ghost does in the movies when traveling through walls. I've seen static electricity, And this wasn't it. For shits and giggles, what do you think it might have been? Since I don't live very far from land between the lakes in western Kentucky, I go down pretty often to fish. I went down this afternoon and stayed until just before dark. There were other people fishing near me, and one of them had a dog with them. Just as it was starting to get dark, the dog started getting restless. At one point, the dog barked and then yelped. Immediately, from the woods, about 200 yards away, something mimicked the dog's bark and yelp perfectly. I don't know that it was something out of the ordinary, but that's never happened to me before there. I'll start with the context. I was out coyote hunting on December 29, 2019. I had been at this property multiple times. It's about 30 miles away from any town, and 10 miles away from the nearest house. I arrived an hour before sunrise to get set up. A pretty normal trip. I had called a few in within 100 yards when they decided to leave. It was almost noon, so I decided to pack up and head home. I was parked about 2 miles away, so I had a little walk. As soon as I turned my back to the mountain, I started hearing this sound. I kept hiking, dismissing it at first, but it seemed to follow me. After about a mile, it was still just as loud as when it started. I thought maybe someone lost their dog, or an animal was hurt, but when I investigated, I couldn't find anything, and the sound stopped. I started heading toward my truck again, and it started up again, which is when I tried recording it. I had an uneasy feeling the whole time, which is strange, because this is a very relaxing and peaceful activity to me. Every logical explanation I've thought of seems impossible considering the location. It almost sounds like a flute or howl of some kind, but not anything I've heard before. Here's the video.